We're here today with Dave Stagl, who's the audio director at North Point Community Church. He also has a popular audio blog, goingto11.com. So Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started in audio and what got you interested?
I started out doing sound in high school for theater. I wanted to do lights, which in retrospect probably wouldn't have been a good idea because I'm not real crazy about heights. But I started doing sound in high school, and I did plays, musicals, all that kind of stuff. So I was just really kind of starting to get interested in it. When I got to college, I was a film student, and I tried to get out of doing sound stuff. But since I was really one of the only people who kind of had a little bit of background on it, I just sort of kept getting pulled in that direction. So I think it was my junior year or my sophomore year, I just kind of said, fine, I get it. Maybe this is something I should be looking at. So I started taking as many audio production classes as I could take and as much music technology stuff as I could take, and interned at a studio, which led into doing audio editing for a job, and then I moved into doing, post and broadcast stuff, and sort of came back around to doing the live stuff. Cool.
I know you have a musical background, so talk to us about how that plays in with your mixing and your audio roles.
That's kind of one of those things that I never really wanted to play an instrument, but between high school and college, I started playing guitar, and in high school, I just really started getting into music, and as I started learning to play, it seemed like something that kind of came somewhat naturally. So it just turned into a great form of expression for me. So played in a band through college. After college, put out a record. It's up on iTunes.
It's cool. And you think that helps in your mixing?
Yeah, I think so. Mixing for me is much more of a musical discipline than anything else. And the musical background that I have from playing, and I've played drums to guitar and singing and all of that, it kind of helps with giving you a background of, what are these instruments supposed to be doing in a song? What's the purpose they serve? What's the role they're supposed to play? And it definitely has helped me a lot.
Cool. So Dave, you've been mixing for a while now. Tell us about how you develop your skills as an engineer.
Well, there's a few different things I've done. I think the first thing, the biggest thing is, for me, mixing is really a musical discipline. So how do musicians get better at playing their instrument? They practice, and it's a lot of practice. It's a lot of doing it over and over and over again. If you're only mixing once a month, you're not going to get there as fast as if you can get in and do something, every week, every day, even if you can do it. But it's practice, practice, practice. The other side of that, though, is for me, I need to have kind of outsiders who can give me feedback, because sound and audio and music, it's all so very subjective. And if I was just sitting around mixing for myself, I wouldn't need to worry about anything, because I can get there and be happy, pretty fast for me. So for me, it's real important to find some people I can trust, and I use a combination of other audio professionals who can listen to stuff I'm doing, and I also like to find people who just know nothing about the technical or the professional side of it, and maybe even people who they're not even musicians. I don't want people who are necessarily tone deaf, but just your regular average listener, who is the average person who's going to be listening to the stuff I do, to get their take on things. Because a lot of times the feedback you can get from them, you can find out, and you have to learn to translate what they're saying, because they'll say stuff like, oh, it was too loud, or it hurts, or, I couldn't understand what, so-and-so was singing or what they were saying when nothing was going on, that kind of stuff. That kind of feedback for me is real important because, at the end of the day, they're the people I'm really mixing for. And then the professionals can give you feedback just to really help you sometimes fine-tune things. Something that's important for me is to kind of know where am I weak in at any given time, and I tend to sort of focus on that one thing. Like right now, guitars are a big thing for me because I'm just not satisfied with what's happening with guitars. So it's an area that I'm really just going to kind of dive into and focus on for a while until I can get satisfied myself, and then I'll start trying to find out what are other people thinking, because sometimes you can get things sounding really good for yourself, and you're just in this kind of tunnel vision situation, and what you like nobody else likes, and that's not who I'm working for, that's not who's coming and listening to it. So it's real important for me to get things in perspective in a lot of different ways.
Cool. So how do you know what your weaknesses are?
For me, it's just more of a sense of things at this point. When I was first starting out, sometimes you don't know what your weaknesses are, and that's why it's good to have other people you can talk to, especially for an average listener. If you talk to them and they say, I can't understand the vocal, well, for me that's like ding ding, hey, I need to work on getting those vocals to work better. Beyond that, a lot of times it's just having some guys who I respect, who also do the same kind of thing, who can listen to what I'm doing, and they can say, I'm not sure about your drums, they sound kind of boxy, or the guitars are real muddy and there's no clarity on what's being played there. Or, hey, are there backgrounds? Are they singing? I don't hear the, or that kind of stuff. Where, and it works the other way too, because it's great, because you can just get a lot of great encouragement out of that too, which is great for your confidence as a mixer. But if for me, it's something I've been doing so long. Wherever I am, I usually try and find a couple of people who I just kind of can say, hey, what'd you think? What are you hearing? Sometimes it's musicians, sometimes it's other audio engineers, sometimes it's a producer, sometimes it's, pastor's wife. I mean, it could just be a lot of different things.
Cool. Do you see any value in board mixes and even comparing them to a CD you might hear on the radio?
It depends on the mixing situation. If you're mixing for a live, or a large room with a lot of seats where you're doing more live sound mixing, everything that's on the stage needs to go through the PA, and that's the primary way that your listening audience is going to hear things, then you can kind of start comparing. I've had stuff that's translated really good and has sounded great, and I've had other stuff that it just doesn't sound quite the same, but I know it was really good in the room because a lot of people were saying it sounded really good. If you're going into smaller rooms, the board mix thing, it can be a good reference for you to have when you have that bass line where you can remember the drums were really loud in the room, so there's not a lot of them in the PA, so there's not going to be a lot of them in the board mix. Because for me, I want to start with sound reinforcement. If something on the stage is making a lot of noise and is coming off the stage into the audience, I don't want to crank that up, in the house just so that my board mix will sound good when I go and listen to it in the car. If I need something like that to feel real good, I'm probably going to set up a separate mix on an AUX or something like that to put that extra stuff back in. But board mixes are great. They just have to be listened to in the proper context.